Welcome to the latest episode of the Cyber Trusted Tech Talks podcast. I'm your host, Jake Adshead, heading up the cyber function at Maxwell Bond and co-host at Trusted Tech Talks. This week, I'm joined by Becky McClory, COO at Paylink Solutions, and Lee Howard, Group Head of IT Security at Vue Group. Today, we'll be discussing their journeys from military into industry, their successes, and obviously their challenges they have faced, along with many others looking to move into the industry.
Thank you, Becky, for joining me on the military into industry and into cyber. Just want to obviously say big thanks again for joining me. And I just want to say, if we can get a quick intro to both of you. I'll start with you, Becky. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So as you say, I'm Becky. I left the military just coming up for 2 years ago. I was in the military for 15 years and I transitioned out and I joined Paylink Solutions as Head of Information Security. So I've been there for nearly 2 years. It's been sort of a good sort of challenge and sort of integration into civilian world. That's sort of me in a nutshell as to where I am now.
Cool. And how about you, Lee?
Yeah, so I'm Lee Howard. I am currently the Group Head of Cybersecurity and Data Protection at Vue International, the cinema operator. I left in 2016, so I was in for about 8 years, and then since then I've had various jobs with various companies. Technical companies, consulting firms, retail organisations, and now I'm a cinema operator.
Bit of a journey. I suppose how have you both sort of got? I suppose how did you both get into it? Like, what made you sort of think, this is where I want to go and this is where I want to be? You know, from where you were. What sort of made you get into it?
For myself, so my background in the military has been sort of intelligence and security. And one of sort of the roles that I did quite a lot of in the military was around information security, asset protection, risk management. So I've sort of got a sort of a good background in that anyway. And then sort of my transition from military to civilian, it was kind of a bit off the cuff, to be fair. I knew that I was going to look at sort of venturing away from the military into civilian world, but hadn't sort of signed off, because when you leave the military, as people know, you sort of have to sign off and you give a year's notice. I happened to be off with one of my children who'd got COVID at the time. So I was sort of in a position where I couldn't do my day-to-day role because I didn't have the sort of the accesses from home to be able to do what I needed to do. So I was doing a bit of personal development. And as part of that, I ended up coming across a job that was in the town where I live. The offices were 10 minutes from my house. So I sort of had a look at it and I thought, do you know what? That's the sort of role that I would be looking at going into if I was to leave the military. So cheekily, I sort of put my CV in. I thought I'll just throw my hat in just to sort of, I've not done an interview or done this process for a long time. So sort of threw my hat into it to see sort of, what the feedback would be. So I could sort of then sort of try and, bring my journey along when I did look to come out. Fast forward a few weeks, I ended up actually being offered the job, and I went back into my boss and was like, look, I'm in this situation. I've got the perfect job that I would look to get for when I would be leaving the military. I appreciate I've not entered that process yet. I was injured as well at the time, so there was going to be looking at doing some sort of medical discharge with a number of people as a sort of a long-term project with the military as well. So I just sort of asked, look, I think there's potential that I will be leaving anyway. This job's not going to be around for long. I don't think this opportunity will be there going forward. Is there any chance you can sort of sign me off and sort of let me go on sort of a short-term 3-month notice? So obviously there's a lot of paperwork involved in that, but long and short of it was they said, yep, here you go, and sort of helped with that process. They could have put some blockers in the way. At the end of the day, there are sort of rules and sort of regulations around how you sort of transition. So from sort of accepting the job to then actually leaving the military, it was a very short period of time. So within 3 months, that was it. I was out and I started my new job in civilian world. So it wasn't a sort of planned as such, but it did sort of really sort of gain traction quite fast. And I guess as some people find, say you have normally that year's transition period to build up into moving into civilian life. I sort of didn't have that, so I've sort of really hit the ground running. So I guess sort of my sort of take on it may be somewhat different to what Lee's probably was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. I think my entry and exit into the military was quite interesting, because I left school at 16, and I wasn't academic or studious. I realized if I went to college and university, it's just destined to fail, right? So I ended up getting an apprentice straight out of school in engineering. So I was a structural engineer, so it's like a white collar apprenticeship, so to speak. But it wasn't really my passion. My passion was tech. I couldn't afford a PC back in the day, so I used to get parts bit by bit and cobble it together, and build it myself. And my uncle at the time was in telecoms. I used to do mess around with twisted pair cables and all sorts of bits and pieces. So I was without realizing it, as a kid, I was a techie at heart. So fast forward to about 20. So I've been doing that for about 4 years, and just didn't have that sort of desire or passion. And entered the Royal Signals as a technician, so as a communication systems engineer, and that's where really sort of I realised, this is me. This is what sort of motivates me. Did some really interesting things, worked within very sort of niche elements within the defence sector, and then in terms of exiting, I think for me the military has its rank structure. Right. And as you progress through that rank structure, there are different requirements and different responsibilities. And sometimes in technical roles, you effectively become less technical because you have to manage. Right. And for me, that wasn't the direction of travel that I wanted my career to take. So no fault of the military. It's just the way it is. You can defer promotion, but you're effectively turning down money at the end of the day. So why would anyone realistically do that for too long? So I made the decision to exit. I mean, yeah, mine was different to Becky. Mine was the hand in your notice. There was a 12-month. So it's an interesting time because you don't have anything lined up, because you can't have anything lined up. So there is a little bit of anxiety, for certainly the first 6 months, where you're still too early to really commit yourself to job applications, because you're not really available, to be honest with you. And then I did my first role. So I kind of semi-transition, right? So I still had certain security clearances that you get in the defence sector, and that is particularly useful for defence contractors. So I ended up getting a role with a big tech company that had a defence contract, and yeah, I was able to retain some security clearances, and that meant I was able to then do that role on a site where it required that. So still kind of in there with the team, just not wearing a uniform anymore, not wearing camouflage. And then we got to about 2017, 2018, I think it was 2017, where GDPR was just coming in. And I think that was like the pivot point in the private sector where cyber was really an industry focused on central government or defence or nuclear or healthcare, which had assets that needed to be protected from a cyber perspective. There was a lot more opportunities as post GDPR for cybersecurity specialist work within the private sector. So I just took a leap of faith and went from defence sector into retail, and then you never look back really. And the industry has just gone from strength to strength really, in terms of, I think it's the demand for the cybersecurity skill sets.
What do you think? Question for both of you really. The challenges from might be, I feel like you guys have obviously you've done really well, and the reason why I've obviously done this podcast is because there's a lot of people have been in your situation, your shoes. Some of them struggling to sort of break into the industry and break into it, but then obviously others have done really well, like yourself. But what I suppose the challenges for you getting into it when you were getting into it, and also this is another question for you, but what do you think the challenges are at the moment that people are facing, let's say that are trying to break into it, or what you're seeing? Let's start with you guys really, but yeah, was there any major challenges that sort of set you or set you back at the time, trying to get into it?
I think with myself, because it kind of, I guess it kind of looks as though it kind of fell into my lap quite well. Obviously, I didn't have to go through that process where, like you say, people have to sort of give the 12 months notice, and it's not really until sort of the last probably 5 to 4 months really where you can start looking and then sort of putting your applications in, because you can't do it at the beginning of your journey, because nobody's going to want you to sort of hang around 12 months with a job offer. So that can be quite scary for somebody thinking, okay, well, I'm giving up a secure sort of role at the moment with an income coming in, to then after that, when it comes to the end of it, am I actually going to have a job? Am I going to have something? And I think one of the challenges that potentially I could have faced had I gone down sort of the route of, submitting my notice 12 months previous, was sort of, obviously, when you're looking at the job sort of specs and the job adverts that are on the market at the moment, it's, asking for, 5 years experience in this industry, this sector. And obviously coming from the military, you don't have that specific industry experience that they're looking for, so to speak. Obviously, people think the military is quite, obviously it is quite niche and it's its own sort of industry. But there are so many transferable skills that you can bring to another industry. Obviously, the basics are all the same still. Nothing sort of changes. Your skill set, the basics is still the same. But it's sort of having getting the faith from people to understand that, yes, you might not have worked outside of the military for a period of time, but you do have that skill set, you do have those transferable skills. But I think sometimes, obviously, people are getting sort of filtered out because they've not got that, you don't have 5 years in the financial sector, you don't have the 3 years worth experience in sort of manufacturing industry, whichever industry it is. And I think it's just getting employers to see past that, you know what, people are starting off on their journeys aren't going to have that industry experience. You've got to give people the chance and give people the understanding that, actually somebody that may have 5 years worth of experience in that industry doesn't mean it's a good sort of standard of sort of experience. They might have been in it, but they might not have been performing, where you could be passing up the opportunity to have somebody on your team that doesn't have that experience, but my God, do they have the skill set that could really sort of enhance your employee base.
What do you think, Lee? Do you think that's the case? And do you think, I don't know, is there a way around it? Is there something that we can do?
I think the industry doesn't necessarily help itself on the outside, so to speak. So I think a couple of challenges, I suppose, that I've observed, and retrospectively now being on the other side, is when you're in and you're serving, roles and responsibilities are very clearly defined. So whether that's with a rank or whether that's with a job title, and it's very, this is your swim lane, this is what you do, right? And then if someone decides one day, I want to do cyber as a specialism on the outside, I think there's two problems really which can be overwhelming. One is, and you'll know this, Jake, obviously working in recruitment, you can have the same role effectively advertised 10 different ways. So you'll have someone who says, I need this role, i.e. security analyst, right? And 10 different businesses or 10 different hiring managers will advertise that same requirement 10 different ways. So just even then looking at it, it's like it isn't straightforward at all. And I think the second thing then is that the military, by its nature, does produce very good generalists. There are some specialists, but to operate effectively within the military, you tend to have to be a good generalist. Now, that's not the same on the outside again. So someone who is looking to pursue a career in cybersecurity on the outside, what is it that floats your boat? Are you an operational person? Do you want to be an analyst? Are you more of a technical individual? Do you want to be an engineer? Are you following a more of a governance, risk and compliance sort of pathway, or do you have the experience to be a security architect, for example, or a manager, a security manager, head of the department, whatever it may be. So I think again there's that aspect of it where the roles in cyber have been broken down into different flavors, and that isn't necessarily reflected on the inside. We have a rank, we have a title, but actually we've been doing several different things on the inside. So that sometimes it can be slightly overwhelming when you want to pursue a particular career on the outside, because I hope I'm making the right decision, and and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I think it's one of them that, like you said, it's the industry just needs. I say the industry. There's a lot of companies out there that are a lot more mature than others, and they get it and they understand what they need and what they don't need, and they understand also that, like Becky said, that you can bring somebody else from a different industry, and it's more about certain skills or even just an aptitude and an attitude and culture fit as well. But then unfortunately, there are those companies out there that just don't understand security well enough, or have the appetite for it or invest in it enough. And I think that's where the likes of us, recruiters, also, people in your positions as well, just need to educate the non-security led people, and sometimes even security led people, that we need to be a lot more inclusive. We need to be a lot more diverse in terms of how to bring people into the play. And I think, again, it's recruiting people and bringing in people that have the right culture fit as well, and the right personality traits as well, rather than just industry or rather than just skill set, and trying to sort of diversify that, really. And I think that's the key with this, is that is what we need to really sort of target as people, really. And I think that's where we need to improve as an industry, which is hard. But it is that's what we need to do realistically. Yeah, and I think that's the main thing, really, isn't it? What sort of other challenges is that the main thing, you think, or is there anything else that's sort of come your way, or when you've recruited, or when you've been looking at different roles?
I think, again, when you're sort of looking at sort of roles, and I know I've sort of been linking back in with people from the military that are that are looking at coming out, and they've sort of asked for advice, and they're like, oh look, there's all these courses, and they're asking for these qualifications and this exam and this and that, and they're like, what, and obviously some of these certifications you can go along and do the training course, do the exam, but then they'll sort of say, no, but also to really sort of pass this qualification, you need to have had this many years experience in that sector to be able to sort of obviously get the full certification for it. So again, there's a lot of emphasis put around sort of people sort of coming into sort of entry level, having CISM and CISP, and obviously a lot of those certifications, you need sort of the experience of actually working in the role, to sort of build that foundation of knowledge and experience to really sort of put yourself forward for those sort of certifications. And even some sort of memberships to sort of security sort of memberships and such. Again, it's asking for that sort of period of time in a certain role, which is hard to sort of articulate coming from the military. You may have had that experience, but again, putting it into words and down onto paper, it's very difficult to sort of put that down. And I think it does scare a lot of people off that want to come out of the military and break into sort of the the cybersecurity industry, because I think, well, I can't because I don't have this, and I don't have the funding to be able to put myself through that. Although they say the military is good, and you have your learning credits that you can sort of use towards some of those. Again, it's very sort of obviously regimented with sort of which providers you can use and which courses you can go on. But it gets very daunting where people think that, well, obviously I can't go into that industry. I want to, but I can't because I don't have this qualification. I don't have the ability to gain this one. And I think sometimes sort of employers spend too much time expecting so many sort of standards of, okay, well, the individual has to have this many years experience, this certification, that and that. And actually, that doesn't necessarily make the right candidate. Somebody could tick all those boxes, but actually, as an individual, you need those soft skills, you need those personal skills to actually be able to perform in that role. You need to be able to talk to people. You need to be able to integrate with a team, which people coming from the military are fantastic at. We have to sort of form relationships and bonds with different teams, sort of at a drop of a hat, and be able to pick things up and run with it, quite quickly, which is a massive skill set in itself, which isn't articulated in a certain qualification or certification. It's just, again, building that understanding around what we can bring to the table that not necessarily is written in black and white as we've got this certification or we don't.
What do you think towards certifications then, Lee? Because I know I knew Becky really again because I think the successes as well for you guys, and that's what I want to bring to the table. But I know, yeah, I suppose worth you talking about it. But I know you guys haven't gone through those processes in terms of certifications and accreditations yourself. So I think that's really worth highlighting. Realistically, that
I mean, as I said at the outset, from an academic perspective, I didn't go to college, I didn't go to university and things like that. I think when it comes to just layering what Becky was describing there around industry-specific certifications, I'm going to caveat this and say having a certification isn't going to hinder you, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But my point is I do think certainly people looking to enter into the industry, do get wrapped up in the significance of having a certification. And I think my advice would be question to yourself, why are you doing this accreditation? Are you trying to learn something new that you just never done before, right? But then that makes sense. If you haven't done it before, it's kind of, if you come from more of a governance background, but you want to get more technical and you're doing the technical accreditation, understood. But if you, like myself, I'll speak from personal experience, I was looking at doing technical accreditations. But my day job, day in, day out, was very technical stuff. And I was doing it for years and years and years, and then I really questioned what value I was getting from doing a technical certification. You're trying to showcase on your CV. I think it's the easiest way to showcase on your CV. There's some kind of accreditation to what I'm telling you about in my credentials, right? But actually, if you're doing this as part of your job, I think the art is pulling it out and advertising it front and center on your CV itself, demonstrating those past experiences. I think sometimes I was when I first started crafting CVs for, jobs, was pretty vanilla CV. I'm Lee Howard. This is my date of birth and this is where I live. And here's some stuff that I've done. It's like, hang on, make it relevant, and I think that's the point. So nothing against doing certifications or accreditations, but you just really need to question, what are you going to get out the back of that? And then ultimately as well, right, people can be disappointed because you could do something and maybe try and game the exam, for example, and then you go into an interview and you just, it's not really there, is it? You know what I mean? So I think my advice would just be really question the whole reason you're taking that accreditation in the first place. If it's learning a new skill, brilliant. If it's just trying to advertise something that you can already do, is there really any value in doing that? It's certainly not hindered me, and I've demonstrated my credentials through experience, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, look, you've got to where you are without them, and it just shows you don't need them. But like you said, they can be valuable, but I think what's more valuable is the experience.
I just want to just on top of that is just say, like, I think the negative impact of this is it puts good people off at even applying for positions. So individuals and hiring managers are losing out to the right candidate because of this. So I think there just needs to be we need to be focusing on behaviours and individuals as opposed to accreditation and certification.
I think for me, and just working obviously in the space and recruiting and working with guys like yourself and people in the industry, and qualifications and certifications are always on the job spec. But when I do speak to heads of and CISOs and managers and they say, look, I need this, this and this, that accreditation is and I just want to say this, it is on the bottom of the list, let's say. It's a desirable. And I think that's the problem, that what a job spec does is it has everything on there. And this is just in general, really. Job specs are a massive wish list across the board, that they just put everything on there. We want this, this and this and this. But realistically, when you speak to the actual person that's hiring for it, you actually realize what they do need and what they don't need. And a lot of the stuff that's on there, they don't realistically need, because they understand that you're not going to get that perfect person anymore, or never realistically could. So it's all about compromising and getting certain other skills and getting the right person and culture and whatnot. So I think what I'm trying to get at is that they aren't necessary, that they are needed, for a lot of companies, but they do have them in the job specs. And I think that's probably what we need to, or could change, when we're posting jobs out, because like you said, it does put people off when it shouldn't, because as soon as you speak to a recruiter or you speak to a hiring manager, a lot of the time, I'm not saying all the time, it's not needed, to have those accreditations, to have a CISP or a CISM or, even a CompTIA, certification. So yeah, it's worth highlighting that from my side.
Yeah, agreed. Completely agreed. I've never heard any peer say out loud, "Thank goodness I've got a CISP," So yeah, I agree.
What in terms of yourselves and sort of going through your career and being in the military, and is there anything that you would have changed, anything from your perspective on where you came from, your journey and where you are now?
I don't think there's anything I would change. Say that the military, I absolutely love my time in the military. And yeah, I wouldn't change any aspect of it whatsoever. Obviously, there were some good times, bad times, hard times. But again, that all helped build and develop me and the skill set that I've got now. And it's a skill set that, is me. It's the basis of my foundation as head of information security. It's, the military has given me that platform to be able to move forward and move into the job role that I'm in now. And no doubt, if I was to look at moving on again or sort of, promoting within the role that I'm in, again, the military foundation, that is what drives that. And no, I absolutely wouldn't change it for the world. Like I say, I absolutely love my time, and it's given me, say, a really good, strong skill set. And sometimes I don't realise quite how many skills it did give me. So say coming into the head of information security role, obviously the basics of that, sort of the risk management, the infosec, what the baseline of the job is. Yeah, 100%, that was my skill set from the military. But obviously, like you say, with the military and you're sort of, you're getting promoted through the ranks and stuff, that managerial sort of skill set that you get from that, obviously it's just day to day within the military that, say you're a corporal, you're a sergeant, you're sort of, leading those sort of below you, bringing those on, being the office manager and stuff, sort of titles that you can now see in the civilian world, and how actually, okay, that's what I was doing as a corporal, and oh, that's what I was doing as a sergeant. So and now, say, coming into the role that I'm in and having sort of that, more managerial side of it, the leadership piece of it, again, say I'm drawing on that more and more within sort of the civilian industry. And again, without sort of progressing through the ranks in the military, I wouldn't have had that skill set. And say there's just so many transferable skills that you bring from the military that you don't realise that as you're working through that role in civilian, like, oh, okay, I can see how I can sort of compare that to this role that I did. And oh, now I'm being asked to do that. And you think, oh, how am I going to do that? And without noticing, you start processing and sort of analysing what it is you're being asked to do, what you need to achieve. And it's like, say, pulling together a set of orders from being in the military, and you just go through the motions without realising it. And again, it's just, you sort of take a step back and think, my God, how much did that career in the military really did give to me? So I think, anybody else that's looking at transitioning, really have faith in the skills that you've got, have faith in the knowledge and everything that you've learned in the military, because you'll just draw on it for, I think, for the rest of my career, I'll be drawing on that, and I'll be ever thankful for that. And it's not, people shouldn't think, okay, well, I'm not really sure this job's asking for this, and I don't think I've quite got that. Actually, really sort of look in on those skills you've got. Speak to people that have left the military. Speak to them about how sort of, okay, there's this role and I'm not sure how my skills can transfer to that. They'll quite easily then talk to you and say, well, actually, it's quite easy. This is how those skills can be used. Draw on this, draw on that. Again, just, I think networking is a huge key part of when you're looking at transitioning from the military to civilian. Reach out to people that you might not have spoke to them for ages, But they will always be happy to help. I've had people that have left the military that I never really actually worked with, but they sort of come and said, look, I've seen your profile. Somebody else has recommended that you worked with you before. They've said you've transferred. I'm looking at doing this. Any tips, any advice, how can I make that transition as well? And I say the military world, you're always going to be part of that world, and say there's a world on the outside as well where, we just pull on each other and we can draw on each other's sort of skills and capabilities. And, it's such a huge pool of people that's, anyone's always, got 5 minutes to help somebody if they can make that transition or just answer any questions they've got. And some people are kind of shy away sometimes because they don't want to ask the question because they don't want to look like they don't know what they're talking about, or I don't want to ask that question because it's going to make me look like I shouldn't be sort of going down this path. Not at all. Ask the questions because actually you probably know the answer already. You just need to hear somebody else say what the answer to the question is to give you that confidence behind what you already know and think.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, how about you, Lee?
No, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And I think it's all worked out pretty well for me, in terms of I had a great career in the military and had some, unbelievable experiences and made some lifelong friends. And yeah, post the military, as Becky alluded to, I think the behaviors that are sort of nurtured and developed in the military as an individual really have carried me through my career. So yeah, obviously there's technical elements and things like that. That's part of it. But I think you tend to get with military individuals is that, yeah, we talk about management, but it's about not necessarily managing others. It's the management of oneself, that drive, that seizing the initiative, just taking control of a situation. I'm the person on point. I'm happy with that. Well, may not be happy with that, but I will, do what I need to do. I think all too often, people, the easy way out is to hide and shy away from a problem, isn't it? And hope someone else picks up the pieces. The military, very much, because you're only as strong as the weakest link, very much changes that mindset and those behaviors to encourage, both physical and moral courage. Doing the right thing on a difficult day is the hardest thing to do. And I think they're the sort of things that for me have carried me through my career, I would say, in an accelerated pace as to some of the other peers that I work with. So yeah, definitely echo what Becky said, really.
Are there any like groups or anything like that where, because obviously like you said, networking is such a big part, in this space and getting into it. And are there any groups or anything like that, that help and sort of bring people together within the military and wanting to get into this space? Or is there anything like that? Do you know?
There's quite a lot of groups. I'm now kicking myself for not writing down what they are, because say that there are quite a few. So with the intelligence corps, we've got our own sort of resettlement sort of group and network, where you can sort of reach in and reach out, as often and as little as you like. Again, if they can point you in the right direction to sort of any sort of qualifications you might be looking for, or any sort of jobs that are coming up that they think somebody might be suitable for. Again, they'll sort of say, okay, I think this person I've worked with, this is here, try this. This is a great opportunity. Sort of put your CV in and see where you get. They'll say the security, other clubs. I know there's sort of a regular security club meet up down in London. Try and do that quite regularly. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. But there is so many. There's a company called Tech Vets that offers sort of skill sets that you can sort of reach into, courses, again, sort of signposting. There are so many, and again, it's just getting out there. I think you could literally do a Google search and so many would come up, and then just speaking to a couple of individuals within one opens a door to several others. Obviously, when you do resettlement, they sort of signpost you to certain places and stuff, which is always sort of handy to link into. But just talking to people, just putting yourself out there, which it can be quite daunting. So especially sort of LinkedIn, putting a message out there, no one's going to sort of look down their nose at you for sort of asking and saying, okay, I'm now on this journey. Any help or feedback would be great. And I've seen so many posts on LinkedIn for people that are at the beginning of their sort of transition period saying, right, I'm now at the start of my 12 months. This is the sort of direction I think I want to go in. Any help would be great. And the amount of people that just reach out and comment and be like, right, yeah, do this, do that. Here's my advice. Or they'll tag somebody else in it and say, can you offer some advice? It's fantastic when you see the sort of the military sort of industry sort of putting their arms around an individual to say, okay, yeah, been there, done that. Here's some advice. Here's what I did, which I maybe would do differently next time. Or yeah, there's so much out there. And say such a friendly environment, you know. I mean, I've been speaking to sort of individuals that, you know, were miles above me rank wise in the military, who I wouldn't have dared speak to in the military, sort of, you know, via WhatsApp or LinkedIn. But now, you know, they're so happy to reach out, and, you know, you still feel yourself wanting to sort of, you know, Sir Mom and stuff. But obviously, you know, that's all by the by now, and you civilians. But yeah, no, there's such a pool of people that want to help and want to see people do well. Nobody's going to sort of tread on you to make themselves look better. They genuinely just want to help somebody else. That, you know, I think a few years ago, people who have been through the journey may have had it a little bit more difficult, say, because I think now there's a lot more out there to help people. Businesses are so much more aware now of, you know, bringing military in and the skill sets and the positives that they bring to their businesses. There's been a huge push for the Armed Forces scheme and the Covenant and that side of things, that I think now there's a lot more opportunity for individuals as they are coming out. And it's just a matter of sort of just reaching in, you know, putting yourself out there, asking for a bit of help. And the amount of help that you'll get is just it's amazing to see.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, like you said, I think everyone wants to help, no matter who you are. Yeah, it's all about helping each other and helping people. So I think
I was going to say, Jay, just very quickly on that. I think anyone who's getting out, like, get on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You know, when you're serving, because you're such a small component of a massive machine. You know, why do you need that external exposure? You know, as a Lance Corporal, you're not doing business to business transactions for the Ministry of Defence, are you, and things like that. You know, so LinkedIn is like sort of a pointless exercise when you're serving. But actually, clearly on the outside, it's a bit. I mean, I had someone, didn't I, just the other day, Jake, that I signposted to yourself. He's looking to resettle. You know, so it's certainly the fastest and easiest way these days to network and then create those connections.
Real. Yeah, and I think just on that, just anybody that's listening, exactly do that. Yeah, and everyone's happy to help, and yeah, I'm sure there's loads of people out there that will.
Yeah. That connection just it relates to Becky's point about, like, sort of this community. You know, the person who originally contacted me worked at one of my old locations, and I was effectively used to work for him. And then he's stayed on, and then someone else is leaving. He's like, "Oh, are you still up in the Northwest? I've got someone. Can I introduce you to them?" And then I introduce them to you, and, you know, it's that whole sort of, you know, that wider sort of network of people looking, as Becky said, looking to help each other out.
Well, a final question really for both of you. What I know, realistically, we've probably touched on it all, you know, throughout this period, but one final tip for anyone that's going through this journey and going through this process to get into, you know, where they want to be in the industry?
I'd say for myself, if I was talking to myself as I am now, I'd say have absolute faith and confidence in yourself and sort of the forward direction that you're going. Don't doubt yourself. Have that faith in your skills and sort of, you know, where you want to go. And just reach out, talk, network, put yourself out there. I think that's a really good sort of basis to sort of to drive from. Don't be shy. Just nobody's ever going to sort of look down at you or question you for reaching out, asking a question, you know, introducing yourself. Just go for it and have the confidence to see the goal that you want to achieve and just go for it.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. How about you, Lee?
Yeah, I think just relax. You know, it can be such an a year building up to anything is going to be a big deal, isn't it? Right. And after leaving an institution, and then you've got to wait this 12 months. And I think individuals do put a lot of pressure on themselves to absolutely nail that first role. Really sort of I want this dream job, and it's going to be perfect, and I'm going to work there for the next 30 years. We all know people change roles more often these days than they did in the past anyway. But I think just the pressure to land that perfect job on the first stepping stone of your private career outside the military civilian career is important, but it isn't the end of the world. Even if you've got it wrong, you can still rectify. Like I was saying before, these different jobs, isn't there? More governance-based jobs, more technical-based jobs. You may realise when you land in one of those positions, I'm in the right industry, but I'm in the wrong role. And you can easily, rectify that. And I think, so just relax. It will iron any creases will iron themselves out in due course.
Amazing. Thank you again, guys. Amazing. Really, thank you for the last 45 minutes and joining me. I really wanted to do this just because there's so many good people working in the roles, obviously, like the guys that I'm speaking to, and Lee and Becky, and that have gone through that transition and gone through it and the process. And obviously there's a lot of people out there that are maybe struggling to get into it as well. But yeah, if you need any support, any help, any advice, we've got Becky and Lee, we've got myself. It's a journey that will definitely pay off in the long run. And then obviously I wanted to do this as well, just to see and make sure that the industry is, I suppose, aware of the struggles and the qualifications, and promoting basically good people rather than just sector and skills and this, that and the other, and trying to get the right people in other than just the skill set and background. So hopefully enjoyed it. I did, and thanks again to both Becky and Lee.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Massive thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Cyber Trusted Tech Talks podcast with me, Jake Adshead, and guest speakers Becky McClory and Lee Howard. If you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to myself or Becky or Lee via email or LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe to our LinkedIn, Spotify and YouTube channels so you don't miss out on any future events, podcasts, webinars or panel talks in the future.